want to thank the many people in our county who took the time to advocate for and even against my proposed budget. Your participation helps strengthen our budget process and our government. Next, I want to thank the County Council and their staff for working diligently to understand my proposal. I know we share a desire to have a great community with outstanding public services. In the end, they realized that what was in the budget were things that our county needs, and that cuts would have had detrimental impacts. In the end, this budget allows us as a government to meet most of the needs within our community, including good schools, good transit, safe neighborhoods, and growing opportunities. I'm also pleased that the council understood and eventually embraced my call for additional revenues to meet the growing needs of our community, especially our public schools. While they took a path on revenues that was different than what I would have proposed, their actions will raise $140 million in new taxes for the fiscal year. Unfortunately, the County Council's tax increase falls solely on the backs of homeowners. By eliminating a 692 property tax credit, known in our county lingo as the Income Tax Offset Credit, or ITOC, they are raising taxes on more than 201,000 households in our county by a flat $692, regardless of your income. There were many ways to avoid this. Back in January, I wrote leaders in Annapolis supporting House Bill 90 because it would have given counties across Maryland a long-needed tool to raise predictable, bondable revenue for transportation and education, authority that Maryland municipalities and Northern Virginia counties already use effectively. Montgomery County's reliance on upfront impact taxes makes development more expensive and less competitive, while elsewhere differentiated commercial tax rates have enabled major infrastructure investments like the Silver Line and other bus rapid transit projects in Virginia. The bill could have given Montgomery County the ability to adopt similar tax flexibility to fund critical projects such as bus rapid transit and to better compete for economic development opportunities. But I've been told that without the support of our own county council, a bill like this will not pass. In March, I proposed a broad-based property tax rate increase of 6.3 cents, which would have generated more revenue, but would have impacted all properties solely based on their taxable value. Under the council plan, 88% of homeowners will pay more than under my proposal. And under the council plan, all commercial properties from the smallest shopping center in Damascus to the newest trophy status office building in Bethesda avoid any new taxes. In other words, it falls entirely on residents. It didn't have to be that way. For months, the county council repeatedly criticized my budget proposal, saying they were worried about a structural deficit. They said we needed to avoid creating future problems. Then they passed a budget that creates, using their framework, a much bigger long-term problem. Actually, not so long-term. It hits the next budget that's produced for FY28. The council's income tax restructuring plan reduces long-term revenues by tens of millions of dollars. Because the change in income rates that they approved takes effect in January, halfway through the fiscal year, there will be only a $65 million loss in revenue in FY27. Compared to what I recommended in my budget. However, that revenue reduction balloons to about $158 million in FY28 when the modified tax rates are in place for the full fiscal year. So while some people may hear short-term tax relief, I see a self-imposed unnecessary crater in our recurring future revenues. And when recurring revenues disappear, we have to begin making permanent service cuts. This will affect schools, it will affect public safety, it will affect transportation, housing, and health and human services. The largest cuts to the budget were to our funding for public schools. The council cut 20% from my recommended increase for MCPS. This is disappointing news to many parents, students, and educators who advocated for full funding, but it could have been worse. I appreciate that several council members held firm against the calls for punitive cuts to MCPS and forced the council to ultimately restore additional funding before the straw vote. The final funding level in this budget will achieve a long-term goal of mine, getting per pupil spending back to where it was in 2010. We are now back to funding our school system as we were during the 2009-2010 school year, over 15 years ago. And it's a lot more expensive to educate kids now than it was then. But let's be clear, MCPS is still receiving $35 million less than what the Board of Education and Superintendent said that our schools and our children need. That means reductions now have to be made to what the schools assumed they would have available next year, including reductions to key support staff. The superintendent tried to impress on the council that every $10 million in cuts would result in losing 100 jobs. Where those cuts come from will be up to Superintendent Dr. Thomas Taylor and the Board of Education. All cuts are likely to be harmful, and I can imagine that they feel, like I do, that reductions should remain as far from the classroom as possible. I hope they're able to maintain that to the best as they can. I want to talk real quickly about some specific reductions. The Council's budget includes additional cuts, or in some cases, a lack of support for critical needs that I'd like to detail to you all now. Health and Human Services impacts, for starters. $1.5 million for annual maintenance of the HHS Community Connect portal was not funded, along with another $1 million for system expansion into additional service areas. This means we'll be shutting down a system that's already operating, that was approved by the County Council, and return to paper applications for a range of programs like the Working Parents Assistance Program, which provides child care subsidies. Millions of dollars in funding and staff time have been invested in this critical eligibility program for families most in need, and that will be lost. 3,000 county residents who are currently using the portal will lose access and will have to return to a paper management system. This is a significant step backwards. By funding and adopting the full implementation of the portal, it was going to once and for all connect all of our programs. For example, users could enter the system through housing, healthcare, or recreation and easily find all the county programs they're eligible for. We were trying to end the days of forcing someone to visit 3 different offices to get the services they could get. It is possible with technology today, but not without the money to make it happen. We lost $340,000 to improve nurse management staffing ratios through 5 additional nurses to enhance quality and the continuity of care in our school health services. We lost $142,000 for increased food costs in the senior nutrition program. This is the program where we provide food to seniors in our community. The cost of food is up, that's no surprise to anybody, and the needs are up, and yet we're not going to have the money needed to address those needs. We lost $196,000 for contractual general dentist rate increases, making it harder to find dentists to serve our population. We lost $50,000 for dental equipment and supplies for MCPS-connected children's services. In public safety, we had impacts like $182,000 for a dedicated K-9 unit that would detect contraband in our correctional facilities. We lost $18,000 to replace obsolete taser units in the corrections and rehabilitation. At Montgomery County Police Department technology investments, we lost $300,000 for trial board resolutions. We lost $180,000 for vehicle recovery software, $180,000 for case management software recommended through staffing studies, $150,000 for fixed automatic license plate readers. And I got to stop on that one because this is a tool that's really important. The fixed license plate readers, every time a car is touched by that license plate reader, it can determine whether it's a stolen car or not. We have been using our existing license plate readers to stop people driving in the county with stolen cars, often coming into the county with a stolen car so they can commit a crime here and leave in a vehicle that can't be traced to them. This is a big thing to be able to lose because it was helping us stop crime before it happens here. We lost $29,000 for crime analysis software. We lost $50,000 tied to police accountability administrative support and $33,000 for the Police Accountability Board public portal. We lost $207,000 for enhanced security guard services at 5 of our library branches that are dealing with more problems inside the library. We know we've got spillover problems and that we need to have more security there, and this funding takes that security away, and it puts an extra burden on both patrons and on our library staff. The county continues absorbing hundreds of thousands of dollars in emergency preparedness and homeland security cuts previously supported through federal grants. We have economic development impacts. The county reduced the Green Bank by $2 million below my recommended budget. That money goes out and funds projects. It eliminated $2 million of third-party support in our business incubators to help entrepreneurs launch, hire, and scale. This cut leaves only one staff member to support 80 companies in our business incubators and Global Gateway program, and no funding for programming. We lost $577,000, a 30% reduction in funding for small business training and one-on-one counseling to help small businesses start and grow. And we lost $85,000 to connect job seekers with employers at the Upcounty American Jobs Center. That was not funded during a period of economic uncertainty and workforce disruption. We lost $274,000 for apprenticeship investments tied to electrical, plumbing, HVAC, and skilled trades workforce development. The above cuts are especially troubling because for all the talk of the Council about the urgency of job growth and new businesses, these cuts go after the very programs whose goals are to do just that, create jobs and create new businesses. In transportation and infrastructure impacts, we lost $922,000 for flex transit service expansions to Poolsville and Damascus. These are areas that don't have transit access right now. We lost $245,000 for expanded all-day Burtonsville flash service. We lost $250,000 for civilian parking enforcement. This means our short-staffed police department will continue to handle parking enforcement rather than responding to calls for service. We lost almost $10,000 for energy benchmarking services tied to climate and energy efficiency initiatives. We lost $150,000 for food systems resilience and education initiatives. In the nonprofit and human service area, we lost $1.5 million in nonprofit federal resiliency grants that was not funded at a time when many organizations are already facing instability tied to federal funding uncertainty and rising demands for services. We lost $78,000 tied to community-based contracts and small business nonprofit support services. Again, these are not abstract budget lines. These are services people use. These are programs people rely on. Council members repeatedly said this was a difficult budget year. I agree. But by refusing to even discuss my revenue proposal, they made it harder for themselves and ultimately harder for our residents, who during a critical time will lose key services and supports at the very moment economic uncertainty demands that we do more, not less. That is the choice this council made, and our residents deserve to know it. Under the charter, I do have the authority to veto individual line items in the budget. However, I do not have the authority to veto the new income tax structure because that was enacted through a separate council resolution. If I had the authority, I'd veto it. I'm focusing on making sure residents clearly understand the long-term impacts of the decisions that were made and preparing responsibly for what comes next. I also want to reiterate something I've said before. Overall, this budget process continued with the progress made last year to add more transparency. While the public deliberations and discussions that occurred this year are appreciated, and they're better than they have been in the past, I also think Councilmember Dawn Lukey raised legitimate concerns last week regarding last-minute changes to the budget and behind closed-door negotiations that no residents saw that occurred late in the process. I also want to recognize Councilmember Kristen Mink as the only one who was willing to advocate for an increase in the property tax, and both her and Willa Jawanda, who tried to come up with at least some least harmful cuts that we can make while allowing the schools to be fully funded. I may not have agreed with all the cuts, but I appreciated the effort to find different ways of balancing this. Regardless of where people stood on this budget, transparency matters. Residents deserve to understand how decisions are made, why priorities shift, and what trade-offs are being considered. That should not depend on who's the council president or who's serving on the council at a given moment. This council and future councils should continue working toward a budget process that consistently upholds transparency and public trust. Maryland voters who requested a mail-in ballot are affected by a statewide error. This is a state-level issue being managed by the Maryland State Board of Elections, not Montgomery County. But I want you to be aware of what's going on. A replacement ballot will be mailed out to all affected voters. Use the envelope marked replacement envelope to return it. Destroy your original ballot. The process is otherwise the same as any mail-in ballot. Be on the lookout for a postcard from the state explaining the issue. For questions or updated guidance, contact the Montgomery County Board of Elections or visit the state's board's website. The situation has been unfairly used by President Trump as a way to discredit our elections. I hope you realize, like I do, that these comments about election fraud are wrong. They're also coming from a person who's practicing election fraud. To be clear, officials identified the mistake, publicly disclosed it, issued corrective guidance. They did all of this before the votes were done. That is how accountable election administration works. I hope this does not dissuade you from participating in the democratic process with confidence. Learn more about how to cast a ballot in the primary election this June by visiting 777vote.org. We have voter information guides in many different languages. I'd like to share an update following the release of the regional report on homelessness from the Metropolitan Washington Council of Governments. Montgomery County was an outlier in our region, with a 26% reduction in homelessness year to year, the only jurisdiction in this region with a double-digit reduction. That progress did not happen by accident. It reflects years of investment in housing, emergency shelter services, outreach workers, mental health services, rental assistance, nonprofit partners, and coordinated support system designed to move people from crisis into stability. I want to thank the County Council for maintaining several critical housing and shelter investments during this budget process, including $2 million for short-term housing and resolution program, which is called SHARP, for families, and nearly another $2 million for overflow emergency shelter support for families to help reduce motel room usage. Those are important investments because homelessness is not solved through slogans. It is solved through sustained funding, coordination, housing availability, and support services. And that's why I remain deeply concerned about what could happen if there are major reductions in housing, healthcare, nutrition, behavioral health, or homelessness prevention funding at the federal or state levels. The numbers reflected in the point-in-time count are people, they're not statistics. They're veterans, seniors, young people, people with families with children, residents dealing with mental illness, residents escaping domestic violence, people who simply fell behind financially in one of the most expensive regions in the country. So while I am encouraged by the progress reflected in this year's numbers, I also view it as a reminder that pulling back investments would now move us in the wrong direction. The results show these programs matter. Housing support matters, shelter support matters, prevention matters, outreach matters. And if we want these numbers to continue improving, we have to remain committed to doing the work. We are just starting our Be Cool, Save Lives campaign. We've experienced a sudden heat wave, with temperatures reaching the mid-90s and overnight lows stuck in the 70s. It's a reminder that extreme heat will consistently be a threat over the next 3 months. Heat waves are becoming more severe in Maryland because of climate change, and they are starting earlier in the season. Globally, heat records are now being broken far more often than cold records. In some places, heat records outpace cold records by ratios as high as 10 to 1. Scientists have been clear that this trend is tied directly to human-caused climate change. The last decade has been the hottest 10-year period in roughly 175 years of recorded global temperatures. Every single year since 2015 has been ranked among the warmest years ever recorded. People underestimate the impact of extreme heat on our bodies, but the fact is that people who work in extreme heat conditions can get injured or die from the heat. Heat waves kill more people on average than any other weather event, and heat-related deaths are on the rise in the United States. Last year, 34 people in Maryland alone lost their lives due to extreme heat, including 4 people in Montgomery County. People experience the heat standing at a bus stop or working outdoors. And when utility bills rise, storms intensify, and prolonged heat creates dangerous health conditions. Every worker deserves water, shade, rest, and the ability to protect themselves when conditions become dangerous. Employers are required to provide workers exposed to heat conditions with 32 ounces per hour. That's 4 cups of water per hour. I want county employees, and really every employer and employee in Montgomery County, to take these conditions seriously. Know the warning signs. If someone is experiencing heat exhaustion symptoms like dizziness, nausea, muscle cramps, heavy sweating, or weakness, get them into a cool, shaded area immediately. Give them water and help them cool their bodies down. If someone is showing signs of heat stroke, confusion, slurred speech, unconsciousness, hot skin, or a body temperature above 103, call 911 immediately. Heat stroke is a medical emergency, and we want everyone to check on older neighbors and vulnerable residents. Please stay hydrated, limit strenuous outdoor activity during peak heat hours whenever possible. Hot weather is dangerous, but preparation and awareness will save lives. Congratulations to the class of 2026. Graduation season is one of the best times of year. Students, parents, teachers, and families have worked incredibly hard to reach this moment. I'm especially looking forward to delivering the commencement address at my alma mater, Albert Einstein High School in Kensington, in a couple of weeks. I will also thank Montgomery College for expanding 2 commencement ceremonies this year so more families and friends can participate in celebrating graduates. That was a thoughtful decision. And I want to congratulate my former Assistant Chief Administrative Officer, Sonia Mora, on being recognized by Montgomery College at their commencement for her decades of service to this county and to our residents. I also want to remind everyone celebrating this season to do it responsibly. Don't drink and drive, don't use cannabis and drive, and don't drive distracted. I encourage everyone who can take one of our no-cost ride-on buses to your destination to do it. These should be joyful milestones for families and students. Nobody wants a graduation celebration interrupted by a tragedy. Memorial Day is Monday, May 25th, which means it will be a busy weekend ahead for many people across Montgomery County. Before we get to the reasons to be excited, let's remember why Memorial Day is a federal holiday. It honors the men and women who lost their lives at war. Its origins go back to the Civil War, when it was first known as Decoration Day. Today it honors any American military personnel who bravely made the ultimate sacrifice during any conflict. Memorial Day has long been the official start of summer, even if many kids will remain in class for a couple more weeks. For our county pools, this is considered the preseason, with hours of operation being limited to the weekend from noon to 6 p.m. On Monday, outdoor pools will be open from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then again from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Our county pools are important community spaces where children can build confidence in the water and learn critical water safety skills. They also provide people with safe, affordable places to stay active, cool off, and spend time during the hottest months of the year. I appreciate the recreation staff, lifeguards, and employees who help operate these facilities, and I encourage residents to take advantage of everything our outdoor pools and all the other activities our recreation department offers during the summer. Regular hours at all 7 outdoor pools will resume after school lets out on the 3rd week of June and through the 14th of August. The only exception is the Up County outdoor pool in Gaithersburg. It will be closed every Friday throughout the summer. Beat the line at the pool by purchasing an aquatic membership in advance by visiting Montgomery County Recreation online. For our memberships and aquatic passes, this is where you get them. That's all for now. I hope you all have a wonderful holiday. I'll be back again next week. Hope it's not too hot, and I will have more updates. Take care.